If someone told you that you could travel through time, where would you go? Would you visit ancient Egypt or the far future to see what's in store for humanity? Or maybe you'd travel to the past and kill Hitler before he ever took power. Well, unfortunately, looks like your time-traveling dreams will never come true, because it turns out that if time travel were actually possible, the entire universe would cease to exist. So, that's great. Thanks to movies and TV shows like Back to the Future and Doctor Who, we all have a pretty good idea of what time machines look like. They take the form of big metal boxes that send people hurtling through time by moving them at crazy speeds or teleporting them through mysterious rifts in space-time. But in reality, time travel might look a lot more like this. It might not even look like anything at all. It's because Einstein's theory of general relativity says that time is just a dimension like X, Y, and Z. This means that time can be bent, curved, and folded in on itself in ways that we can't even imagine. And it also means that somewhere out there, right now, there may be a version of you watching a different version of this video on a different timeline. Yeah, things are gonna get real weird. The first thing that you need to know about time travel is that there are two very different kinds. The first is called traveling to the future, and the second is traveling to the past. Traveling to the future is easy. Just hop in a spaceship and zoom away from Earth at near light speed. The faster you move, the slower time moves relative to people back home. That's why satellites that orbit really fast actually age slower than we do. If you could figure out how to accelerate yourself to 99% of the speed of light, then 1 year on Earth would be roughly 7 years for you. So traveling to the future is just a matter of getting really, really fast, which is hard, but not impossible. Traveling to the past, however, is another story. For starters, it comes with a whole host of paradoxes, like what would happen if you went back in time and killed your grandfather before your father was born? Without your grandfather, your father would never have existed, and neither would you. But if you didn't exist, then how could you have traveled back in time to kill your grandfather in the first place? This is known as the grandfather paradox, and it's one of the most famous thought experiments in physics. There are many attempts to solve the grandfather paradox, such as the many-worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, which basically says that every time a decision is made, the universe splits so that every possible outcome can happen. In this model, when you kill your grandfather, you create a new universe where your dad never existed, and therefore you never existed either. But in doing this, you also created a new version of yourself in the old timeline who didn't kill the grandfather, which means the universe splits again, and so on and so forth. Eventually, this creates a sort of multiverse where every possible version of everything exists in some alternate universe. But aside from this many worlds mumbo jumbo, there are other reasons that traveling to the past seems pretty dodgy. First, it violates the conservation of entropy, which basically means that things tend to get more disordered over time. Think about your room. When you leave it for a week, it gets messier, not less messy. Scientists think that this is because the number of possible arrangements for messy things is much greater than the number of arrangements for neat things. Therefore, a messy room is much more likely to happen naturally than a neat room. In fact, scientists believe that the arrow of time only points forward because our universe started out in a state of incredibly low entropy. Everything was neatly organized inside a tiny ball of hot plasma. If time travel were possible, then it would mean that somewhere out there, the universe is maintaining low entropy, which would violate the laws of thermodynamics. But the biggest problem with traveling to the past has to do with wormholes. Wormholes are hypothetical tunnels that connect to different points in space-time. The idea is that if you wanted to travel between two very distant places in the universe, you wouldn't need to go around. You could take a shortcut through a wormhole. We have never observed a wormhole in person, but according to Einstein's equations, they should exist somewhere out there. Here's the problem. To make a wormhole, you would need to find a way to warp space-time to the point where the two ends of the tunnel touch. This requires so much energy that if a wormhole did exist, it would collapse faster than you could step through it. Not to mention, wormholes can't take you backwards in time. Even if you manage to stabilize one and use it as a time machine, it would only take you to the future, stat S, because the inside of a wormhole is extremely unstable, and anything that goes in gets stretched and distorted until it eventually gets S squished out the other end. So any time traveler who dared go through a wormhole would emerge in the future, far, far away from where they started. Luckily, physicists recently figured out how to make a wormhole that doesn't require bending space-time or finding exotic negative energy. All you need is 2 black holes. Now, obviously, black holes are extremely dangerous, but physicists have found that if you connect 2 of them with a wormhole, the gravitational forces would actually keep each other in check and prevent them from destroying each other. In theory, if you could keep the wormhole open long enough, you could use it as a time machine by accelerating one of the black holes near the speed of light and then dropping it into the other one. That's because as the black hole accelerates, its gravity gets weaker, okay? Which reduces the amount of stretching and squeezing that would normally destroy you on the way through. Of course, this is easier said than done, since opening up a wormhole between 2 black holes would require about 10 raised to the 37th power joules of energy, which is roughly equivalent to the mass of the moon. But hey, if anyone out there has a spare moon lying around, this could be the perfect use for it. But let S say that you've overcome all the scientific and mathematical obstacles and you've actually built a legit time machine. What then? Well, sadly, probably not much. That's because if time travel were possible, the universe as we know it would be impossible. Let us explain. We know that the universe is expanding, and it's expanding faster and faster. This means that eventually everything will drift apart so far that galaxies can no longer form stars and black holes. Stars will run out of fuel and planets will grow cold. The heat death of the universe is inevitable, and it turns out that the existence of a time machine would speed up this process by a lot. Okay, here's how. Time machines emit a tremendous amount of energy. Just think of all the electricity required to make a portal through space-time. So all that energy would quickly turn the time machine into a massive star. Now, you could try to hide your time machine, but that would just accelerate the expansion of the universe, because the energy inside your ship would continue to create new stars until every last bit of fuel was spent. After that, your time machine would become a black hole, ripping apart everything around it until every last atom had been destroyed. And that's why, if time travel were possible, we wouldn't be able to exist. Our universe relies on the delicate balance of physical constants that allow for stars and planets to form, for atoms to stick together, and for life to evolve. If you introduce a time machine to the mix, these constants get thrown out of whack, and the universe becomes a chaotic mess of exploding stars and black holes. Of course, scientists have thought of this, and they came up with another solution, which is to ban time travel. In the late 1940s, physicist von Neumann proved mathematically that if a closed time-like curve or CTC exists, then time travel must also exist. A CTC is essentially a loop in space-time that allows you to travel backwards. Von Neumann showed that if CTCs existed, then you could use them to send signals faster than light, which would break the laws of physics. Therefore, he concluded that CTCs and time travel couldn't possibly exist. This argument has remained the most compelling evidence against time travel for decades, but in 2022, physicists found a loophole. It's demonstrated that while a single CTC can't be used to send messages faster than light, an infinite number of them could. That's because if a message is sent along a CTC, then it will eventually return to the present. If you have infinite CTCs, then the message can keep bouncing back and forth between them indefinitely without ever returning, which effectively allows you to send messages faster than light. So, what does this mean? Well, it means that if time travel were possible, then physics would need to be rewritten. Basically, the universe as we know it would fall apart. Okay. and that's kind of a bummer. But don't worry too much. There are plenty of other universes out there where time works differently. Maybe in some of them, time travel is possible. And if that's the case, then perhaps we'll meet there one day. Thanks for watching.